I had an idea that just wouldn't let me go until I programmed it. My name is Satoshi Nakamoto. You don't know me, not yet, but my invention will change your life. By linking all computers, our lives were digitalized, reduced to a set of data that need only be collected and analyzed. Every word, every gesture, every transaction. The internet was transformed from a window onto the world into a means of control. A new economy was emerging. We would be its raw material. This new world would upend everything: our communications, our rights, our privacy. In the era of self-styled promotion, privacy is a revolutionary act, regardless of whether there is something to hide or not. Privacy is not secrecy. A private matter is something you don't want the world to know. A secret is something you don't want anybody to know. Privacy is the power to selectively reveal oneself to the world. Freedom.
With the growth of the internet, it became necessary for everyone to have access to strong encryption. Cryptography is the art of scrambling information to make it unintelligible except to those that have the right key to unscramble it. So governments formed their opinion about cryptography as a consequence of how pivotal it was to the outcome of World War II. The government regarded it as a munition and restricted its export. The cypherpunks, a group of activists in the San Francisco Bay Area, were quite interested in promoting strong encryption.
For us cypherpunks, freedom is non-negotiable. It tops everything. Freedom is our struggle. Eric Hughes said it in his manifesto back in 1993. Privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. We cannot expect governments, corporations, or other large, faceless organizations to grant us privacy out of their beneficence. Cypherpunks write code. We know that someone has to write software to defend privacy, and since we can't get privacy unless we all do, we're going to write it.
They believe that true human expression is really only possible when you can protect your anonymity. And out of this movement came many attempts to recreate various fundamental institutions of society using the complex mathematics of cryptographic systems. So things like voting systems, digital communication systems that enabled very strong privacy.
The cypherpunks were a group of individuals who felt that cryptography could enable new human freedom. That freedom to communicate and the freedom to send money. And there were many different versions or ideas behind, like digital cash.
I've got to send something for my mom's birthday. I'll then book plane tickets for our trip next week, and my kids got to go to the library to look up dinosaurs.
Hey, we can take care of all that before we go.
Yeah, right.
Oh, with America Online.
America Online can do all that?
If you can control people's money, you can control every aspect of their life. If you can surveil people's money, then you know everything you need to know about them.
How about sending your mom some nice flowers? All you do is click on Marketplace, we place an order. And it's so easy. All you do is point, click.
America Online, a new way to use your computer to communicate, have fun, and get instant news and information.
A giant virtual supermarket. That's what the internet promised us. But we saw something quite different.
People have distrusted the traditional financial system for some time. They'd been working on peer-to-peer currencies for decades because the internet made information accessible to everyone. But no suitable currency, no global universal currency exists without a central bank. That was a drawback.
Control trade, and you control freedom. As the internet became a huge platform for trade, it needed a currency. Anonymous, counterfeit-proof, with no middleman. But there was an issue: double spending.
The double spending problem is this idea that digital information is easy to copy. And if you have a form of digital money, how can you keep track of that money and make sure it's only spent once? Now, with physical paper money, when you give it to someone, you no longer have it. But in the digital realm, you can give someone a copy of something digital, a perfect copy that is indistinguishable from the original, and still keep the original. Now there are two copies. What if you then give it to someone else again?
On the internet, everything can be duplicated infinitely. Solving the double spending problem would help prevent fraud on the net. Copy and paste could no longer be an option. Without it, online commerce would be impossible.
It was a complex technical problem. That's why it took decades to solve. Bitcoin is the result of decades of intensive research, an ideology of freedom, and a desire for secure payments.
These are the individuals who had built precursors to Bitcoin, but these precursors hadn't been successful. If you think of Bitcoin as a new species of money, these species died on the operating table. They never really made it out of the lab. And so the cypherpunks wanted to create a digital cash, but they had no idea how money worked. They knew how cryptography worked, but they had very poor understanding of economics, monetary policy, and money. Satoshi did.
Sometimes the solution appeared to be within my grasp. Other times it appeared entirely out of reach.
The stock market is now down 21%.
It was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
This could be the most serious recession in decades.
What started in America last year has now spread to every part of the world.
The financial world collapsed. Its instruments, its rules, the creation of wealth, all one big fiction. A web of lies and opaque algorithms. The opposite of what I had been working on for years, an open, universal, well-ordered mathematical world. The Bitcoin code haunted me day and night.
Lehman Brothers had just collapsed. There had been massive bailouts. It was a huge, super stressful time period in the world.
And finally, the time had come. It worked. Cryptography had cracked double spending. Absolute transparency, guaranteed anonymity. Bitcoin was ready.
Satoshi first shared the Bitcoin white paper with the cryptographer mailing list, which was comprised of the cypherpunks. October 31st, 2008 is when he releases the white paper. And Satoshi waited for that exact moment because it sounded like he had completed Bitcoin a little bit before that and was waiting for the peak moment of despair in the financial markets to press the send button.
A technical scientific paper that described in just over 8 pages in beautiful detail, very concisely, very clearly, the primary technical ideas of Bitcoin.
The first people that heard about Bitcoin typically scoffed at it. They thought it was a joke or they didn't think it was going to work. A few months later, he released the code. In the Genesis block, he has a headline from the Times, UK Chancellor on the verge of second bailout for banks. So he's very much, this is a very aggressive stance, anti-banking, anti-central banking, anti-government. In his writings, he goes, the core root of the problem with money is it requires trust to make it all work. We must trust the banks. We must trust the merchant processors. We must trust the central banks. And he goes, with Bitcoin, we remove that needed element of trust. Bitcoin's network wasn't in a state of too much testing for that long of a time. It was in a state of very active development and in production. Cypherpunks write code. That isn't just enough to talk about it, you have to go implement it. And Satoshi very much fit that, where he goes, okay, I'm gonna go make this happen. I'm gonna go release this to the world.
I like the idea of writing software and releasing it, and the software changes the facts on the ground. It's politically easier to bring about these changes if the software is already deployed. It makes it harder to make the software illegal if it's available everywhere.
The program was launched. I had won a victory against the banks, against state power. I had to be careful in the early days. I had a few allies, but it was a minefield. A handful of disciples does not make an army. Bitcoin was easy prey.
Bitcoin certainly wasn't 100% perfect right off the bat. There were a few bugs, few flaws. From a network perspective, it very easily could have been crushed by, a really motivated attacker. But luckily that didn't happen. I think most people dismissed Bitcoin, and governments included, dismissed Bitcoin as silly money for a long time, and most governments still do.
What is the value of a new currency? It was valued at what it cost to produce it. $1 for 1,500 Bitcoins. Trust would then follow.
Late 2010, 2011, there was a few OTC markets where people would essentially on the forums be like, hey, I'm selling 10,000 Bitcoin, and someone go, cool, I'll buy it for $10.
It didn't immediately become a currency, and it's still not clearly a currency. To me, it's just becoming a currency. Not because the government says at some point, it's a currency, but because more and more people are using it as a currency.